Right, welcome everyone. I think you'll just be joining us now, so I'll just wait a couple of minutes, well, not minutes, just a little while as people start to come in to the session. It's great to be here to discuss the topic of what is modern work experience and how can you ensure it is meaningful. Some of you may have been joining sessions throughout the day, but just some quick housekeeping from me before I introduce myself and the panel. There is both a chat function and a question space to the right of hand side of your screen, so you can add your chat and speak to people who are also online with us today, and then you can also put some questions for myself and the panel into the Q&A function, and we'll come to them at the end of our session. We think we're just having a few technical issues at the moment, so we were going to bring up some slides so that I can bring you a bit of context, but whilst we're waiting for that to happen, let's do some quick introductions. So I'm Erica Chamberlain and I head up strategic business partnerships at the Careers and Enterprise Company, and I'm going to be your chair for this session, and we've got some fantastic panelists for you. Unfortunately, we were going to have 3 panelists, and we were going to have Harriet from KPMG, but unfortunately she's unwell today, which often happens at this time of year. So we have been doing some fantastic work with KPMG, and they are developing an impact report all about that work. So we'll make sure that that can be made available to any of you who wanted to hear about their work from this panel today. But let's introduce the panelists that we've got with us. So we have Lian from LOVAT Parks, and we have Tom from BAE Systems, and they're going to be sharing their experiences of developing and delivering meaningful work experience. So we're going to have 55 minutes for our session. We're going to start with some brief context setting from me, and then we'll give each of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves, their company, and an overview of their work experience programme and what they're doing in terms of delivering meaningful work experience. And then we're going to have some time to answer questions about anything you've heard. So as we're speaking and things are coming up, do pop those questions in the Q&A. And I know that from previous sessions that I've attended, you can upvote the ones that are most popular, and then we'll get to those first. So still haven't quite got the slides, but I'm just going to begin anyway, because that's the way of these sessions. So hopefully they'll pop up as I'm speaking. But really just to start with some brief context. For any of you who don't know the Careers and Enterprise Company, we're the national body for careers education in England, and we support schools, colleges and employers to deliver high quality careers education. And our mission is to ensure that every young person, no matter where their starting point, can find their best next step. And we run a place-based system, so we have 44 careers hubs across England, and they work with 93% of schools and colleges. So we have really good coverage across England, and those careers hubs are run in partnership between CEC and combined and local authorities. They're responsible for driving forward that quality careers education in their regions, and they connect into local growth plans to support those clear pathways for young people. Nationally, we also train careers leaders and provide quality assurance and impact data to schools, colleges and young people and employers. And we know that skill shortages persist for many industries, and the careers education system, coordinated by CEC and led by those economic partners that we work with locally, can really help close some of those skills gaps by strengthening that connection between education and employment. And a vital part of that connection is ensuring that young people develop the skills, behaviours needed for their transition into the world of work. And they can develop those skills through work experience. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And the next one. And the next one. Great. So we also know that many young people, and I'm sure you've heard this on some of your other sessions already as part of the conference, that many young people are missing out. When we're discussing ambitions around work experience, we really need to reflect on why it's so important that young people access experiences that will keep them engaged in their curriculum learning, build their essential skills, and support their transitions into their next steps. The latest figures for young people aged 16 to 24 who are not in education, employment or training paint a worrying picture for young people. I'm sure you've been talking about some of these at the conference today, but between April and June 2025, 948,000 young people aged 16 to 24 were classed as NEET, and that represents an increase of 25,000 compared to the previous quarter, and 27,000 more than the same time last year, pushing NEET numbers closer to the 1 million mark. If we go on to the next slide. What we do know is that high quality careers education can be a support when we're thinking about young people and helping them to achieve positive destinations. It obviously takes many different things, but this is just one area that could support that. And our data has shown that for education institutions that are fully meeting all Gatsby benchmarks, which means they have excellent careers provision, their students were 3.7% less likely to be NEET than their peers in schools with no Gatsby-style provision. We go on to the next slide, please. So we're talking about meaningful work experience. We also know that the government has a policy ambition to deliver 2 weeks' worth of work experience for every young person, recognising the real important role that plays in improving work readiness and employability for the next generation of talent. It's important to note that meeting the 2 weeks' worth of work experience is not yet policy. This is a long-term ambition which is signalled in updated statutory guidance for schools and provides some guiding principles that you can see on the screen. So government is emphasising that work experience should be employer-led, aspirational and inspirational, and offer young people first-hand immersive experiences of the workplace. The focus is on starting earlier at year 7, which is age 11, and offering multiple targeted and variable experiences, giving young people the opportunity to compare different industries, helping them develop work readiness skills and make more informed choices about their future. So we go on to the next slide. So schools are being asked to work towards meeting the updated Gatsby Benchmark 6, which is part of that framework that defines what world-class careers provision looks like. Now, over 4,700 schools, special schools and colleges across England already use the Gatsby benchmarks, and they have been updated to ensure that they keep pace with changes in technology, education and the labour market. Now, that new definition of Gatsby Benchmark 6, which is referenced in the statutory guidance I just showed you, has been updated so that schools now offer multiple workplace experiences before age 16 rather than just one. And these experiences can take many forms. So that could be visits to workplaces, work shadowing, placements. They could be virtual in part, but they must be anchored in in-person experiences. And the thing that I've got up on screen is that there's now a really clear definition of what makes these experiences meaningful. They need to have a clear purpose. They need to be underpinned by learning outcomes. They need to involve real tasks, allow for interaction with a variety of employees, include feedback from employers, and then really importantly, provide time for young people to reflect on what they've learned before they take their next step. So if we go to the next slide, please. So at the Careers and Enterprise Company, we've been developing support to ensure that the career system gets ready for this change and ensure that work experience is meaningful. And that's our EqualX approach, which really allows educators to embed a multi-year meaningful experiences within a progressive whole school careers programme. So for any of you who's on this webinar talk now, you might think of the kind of 1 to 2 week blocks of traditional work experience, as you can see on screen, at year 10 or possibly at year 12 only. And you may have experienced that young people often have to find their own placement, relying on contacts from parents or carers, and not necessarily in a sector that they understand or are interested in. In contrast, the EqualX approach focuses on providing every young person with multiple varied experiences from year 7 onwards, so that by the time they're older and get to Key Stage 4, they're more aware of the sectors that interest them, understand their career readiness, are more informed to make active choice about their pathways. So this approach gives employers like you the opportunity to really engage in flexible models of meaningful work experience where they have the capacity. It's not a one size fits all. And the key thing here is to understand the outcome you want as a business and what the young person also needs. So if we go on to the next slide, CEC have developed as well the learning outcomes and student level objectives that go alongside this approach. And this is really to support the schools to set the goals for learning for those young people when they're on those experiences. They can specify the knowledge, the skills, and the behaviours that learners should be able to demonstrate after completing any activity. And these learner level objectives provide deeper direction for both the individual learner and whoever's delivering the activity, ensuring there are really measurable outcomes against that planned intent. So schools will be using the model, the outcomes and objectives to map their current offer and identify gaps and improvements that can be made. And once this is embedded in the system, it'll be much easier for schools to communicate with employers about what students need to gain from any experience. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So before I hand over to our fantastic panel, I wanted to let you know about some support that's freely available to all employers. CEC has our employer standards for careers education that have been developed to guide organisations of all shapes and sizes, whether you're an SME or whether you're a larger organisation, public, private, to maximise the impact of employer engagement with young people. They've been developed based on best practice across the sector and with leading employers and employer bodies inputting to them. So what is the employer standards? It's a framework so that even if you do nothing else and you're thinking about doing some outreach with education, you can review the headlines and consider your work against them. The standards are grouped under 3 pillars focused on inspiring young people, preparing them to be career ready and collaborating for success. And then on top of that, there's a free online self-assessment tool with real-time results based on your answers, which can help you compare to others in your sector and size of business. But then most importantly, it provides a roadmap with resources which can help you improve the impact of your outreach. So if you go on to the next slide. And the reason I wanted to mention the employer standards in this session is that one of the resources you gain access to after the assessment is our Standard 1 Provide Meaningful Opportunities guide. It's a new guide for employers, really thinking about providing those meaningful workplace experiences. And it's there to support employers of all sizes and experience levels. You can access inspirational videos, ready-to-use templates, project briefs, examples, and FAQs. So that's giving you all some context, an idea of what we mean by meaningful work experience, and some information on where you can get further support. One of the best ways, I think, to get ideas is from others. And we've got this guide here, but actually what we've got today is our great panel. And I'm going to start by asking Lian, Locke, Positive Impact Manager from LOVAT Parks, to just give an overview of their work experience offer and how you have really approached building it from scratch. So over to Lian.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Erica. I work for the first B Corp holiday park company in the UK. We were first 220 B Corps, and we were the first holiday park operator to be certified. And we firmly believe that everything that the Careers Enterprise Company stands for and is looking to build really aligns to our values and our own vision. I do have a set of slides, so I think we're just waiting for them to click in. Aha, beautiful. Okay, so yes, I'll be covering off the young learners' experience of work, which we welcomed, as you can see, James there from a local special educational needs school. And I'm going to be taking you through how we built the scheme completely from scratch, because we didn't actually find a template that really tailored to us and what we wanted to achieve from this scheme, and putting it in its first year this holiday season. Ready for the next slide, please? So we had a lot of groundwork to do, and Stephen and Erica have been really instrumental in helping us get over the line when it came to understanding the legalities, understanding how we and what we needed to set up to physically welcome someone onto one of our parks, and also give us a frame of reference of how others are already achieving it in very different industries. So we pulled best practice from all of our colleagues on the work experience panel as well, which we joined simply through meeting Stephen and Erica. Team buy-in is a big thing. We have 4 holiday parks in Cornwall and 8 nationally, and getting the team on board was actually went really, really smoothly. And I think that was down to pretty much the way we delivered it and worked with the teams to build up the introduction side of it, welcoming the young learner into our team and giving them small and bite-sized tasks to do alongside us was really, really beneficial to everybody, getting to know the young learner and also having them almost act on their own initiative by the end of the scheme, which was just wonderful, because that meant that James had so much confidence, so much comfort, and he was really thinking about what's next when it comes to the day-to-day in the business. And as Erica touched on in her presentation, very much person-centered. This is what personally motivates me. My daughter's currently 8-year-old and thinks she knows everything, so a teenager in the making. And work experience as it sits at the moment, I'm not confident that it would really give her much value when it comes to it being person-centered. And that's what I would really like to make a difference on, not only in the holiday park industry, but if I can, within the UK, within everything that's coming up that Erica explained. Next slide, please. So what do we offer? One of the crucial elements, I believe, was welcoming James and his mentor from the school behind the scenes beforehand. So inviting him to the park on a beautiful sunny day for an ice cream and a walk around, giving him the map, allowing him to explore, get lost, have a look in accommodations, introduce himself to the team, and really get comfortable with the park. So day one wasn't walking into reception being, a little bit apprehensive, as anyone is on the first day of a new place, but also bearing in mind that James had never been in a workplace setting before, so actually didn't know any of the big risk factors when it comes to maintenance, housekeeping, reception, what to look out for, and also the GDPR that we have to deal with in every industry these days. We also thought it was really important to break it down into 1 day a week over 5 weeks. Mainly, we thought that for a number of reasons, to hopefully enhance concentration, to enhance comfort, and also dedicated reflection time, not only giving that within our workbook that we created to sit and write down with the people, the work experience team, as in the immediate hosts that he would be working with every single day, but also taking his workbook away and reflecting in his own time, either at school or at home, wherever he's most comfortable, and bringing it back in as to what he really feels that he's achieved and what he'd like to be immersed in the next 1 day a week sessions. Learner-led discoveries were really important to us as well. It was really important that James felt comfortable enough to share what he'd be interested in for the following week, and that we didn't pigeonhole any young learner whatsoever in this process. It's their ambitions and it's their skills and interests that we really wanted to ignite within this process. And by pigeonholing them into a set, you must be here at 9 o'clock, whilst arrival time was important, you must be here at 9 o'clock. This is exactly the work area that we need you in, and this is what you're going to be doing. We allowed James to highlight what he'd be interested in and move with that. And if he wanted to change departments, or if he wanted to look into a different area, because actually the holiday park industry is multi-layered these days. We have sustainability as a layer, we have operations as a layer, we have budgets and finance as a layer, and we also have a huge part of our business, which is holiday home sales. So James was able to comfortably drift in between, make new relationships confidently, and also was really comfortable in asking questions. And as I said earlier, getting to the point of using his initiative, we were all just so proud of him when that time came. Next slide, please. The feedback, as I've said, it was an open and learner-led itinerary. It suited the audience well. When we were devising our structure, our routine, and our workbook, we shared all of this with young learners, not only in my daughter's school, but also with other classrooms, with the Careers Enterprise, with the Work Experience Group, and with other industries, so charities that we work really closely with, and other businesses of completely different nature to ours, just to make sure that we'd ironed everything out. We're not saying that our workbook and our system would suit everybody, but for us, we just wanted it to be as hassle-free and stress-free as possible. And always taking on James's feedback as well was really important, which I think sometimes gets lost in a structured process sometimes. sharing what to expect within the LOVAT team, building confidence and willingness to open the door to their environment. The team were incredibly welcoming, and they took great pride in sharing feedback to James, whether that's through one of our thank you kindness cards or a really structured email that I could share with the careers lead. They were really keen to tell us how much James had shone, and from day one to where he was on week 5, they could really see the building that he'd done and the development that he'd done, and consistency in supporting team and encouraging thoughtful introductions. So there was a few of our team that really took James under their wing and were keen to introduce him to everyone, and they met some of the regular owners, some of the regular holiday makers, almost, really saying we're super proud of what he's achieving. And I think he definitely brought something to their day as well, and they're really keen. We're just about to welcome 2 new work experience young learners, so it's a really exciting time now that we've got the confidence of this works actually. We've done a few tweaks. We've listened to James's feedback, we've listened to the careers lead feedback, and we feel like we're really just evolving and getting some traction with this, so it's a really exciting time for us. And the final slide, I think it is. Yeah, so as I've said, it's just the beginning. Transformational experiences, not just tick box, is incredibly important to us, and we hear that every single time we speak to Erica and Stephen and the work experience group as a whole as well. Sharing our understanding so we can save anybody else the legwork. I'm more than happy to share anything that we've put in place if it helps somebody else reduce their to-do list, which we're always keen to do. Build an industry talent pool. The sooner people realise that hospitality isn't just reception, housekeeping and maintenance, the better, and really getting people in from just a real early days, young learners, and this has actually catapulted us on to go into mature learners delivery. We are next month welcoming 3 residents from St. Patrock's in Cornwall to take on a similar but tailored scheme. Now we've got a bit of confidence to come and join us for a real experience of work for the next 4 months, and then apply within LOVAT Parks to go into their area of interest for a paid role, which hopefully should make a real difference. And they're already building relationships from 2 of the introduction days that we learnt were great for James. So we invited the St. Patrock's residents to park, gave them exactly the same show round and introductions, and already that interest and thirst for knowledge is there, which is really wonderful to see. Adopting young learners' fresh eyes that I touched on earlier. James's ideas were fantastic within the business, and I think the value put on them is always undermined, I feel, sometimes when there's either an intern joining an industry or a young learner joining an industry. They have a totally different take on what we see as day to day, and I just think that's so valuable. His feedback was so valuable. And learn from every individual how we can create the foundations for them to build a bright and confident future. Again, just going back to what Erica said, and doing it with purpose and giving them an immersive experience that's led by them. And that's it. I hope that wasn't too much waffling.
No, that's fantastic. And just so you know, you'll all get access to this of sort of what I presented earlier and where you can kind of get some more support. But Lian, thank you so much for sharing that initial overview of your work experience program. I think there's several things that chime through for me, and we can take the slides down now so people can see our faces a bit more clearly. I think there's just something that really chimed through there was that kind of person-centered, learner-led approach. And I guess that really chimes with what we're talking about, which is that outcomes focus, and it'll be different for every business what you want to get out of it, and it'll be different for every young person of where they are. And I think the way you've approached it has meant that you can really respond to that, and that might be for individuals or it could be for groups of young people, but that real person-centered. And I guess you've also touched on a couple of those key things that I was saying. Know why you're engaging, and you've got a couple of reasons there, and you've got that kind of ongoing talent pool and getting that kind of sustainable links, but also some of those challenges that other people on the call might have, which is around how do you get that buy-in from volunteers? How do you get people in the business to really take this on board? Which I think is something that we could sort of maybe come back to. So now, Tom, I'm going to hand over to you and ask you just to introduce yourself and a bit about your business and what your work experience program entails.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, Erica, my name's Tom Rogers. I look after early careers and skills as a practitioner for BAE systems, very specifically for submarines in the southern sites. It's a bit of a long journey to get through my job title. But I will apologise. I don't have an updated browser enough to get a fancy background, so you have to put up with my artwork in behind. So hopefully I'm interesting enough to keep your attention for now. But as I said, I look after kind of boots on the ground work for lots of things from attraction to recruitment. Currently looking after 2 T-level students, which is pretty much on the same vein as work experience, really. It's fantastic. But work experience is definitely one of those. And for the company itself, and certainly for me personally, progression is a huge factor in what we believe in for outreach and attraction. We want to encourage people to come and work from us from day one, and having lots of conversations really about the benefits and why work experience is meaningful, not just for the students, but for the business. Is that it's hugely more important than something like a careers fair. You get a week with a student to really define what your business is and what your industry is. If you're looking at it rather unselfishly, you can get people into your industry, not just your business. But our work experience as a whole is quite exhaustive, actually. We do quite a lot, which is fantastic because we're able to. We have fantastic budget for it. So I look after 4 sites in the southern part of England, and we deliver years 10 and 11 work experience into all 4 of those, about 16 students each, so very busy weeks. And then we also then deliver a years 12 and 13, what we call a spotlight work experience. And now I really enjoy the pyramid that modern work experience brings. So you have at the bottom the kind of introduce and inspire, navigate and explore, and then apply and demonstrate. So we see it in that very format. So with our years 10 and 11s, we try to do a navigate and explore part of their journey. So they're really trying to understand what types of careers and industries they're interested in or not interested in, which is what makes it so meaningful. And that's things such as talks from people in the business, doing some STEM activities. It might not seem like it's completely related to your actual business, but it's getting them to use some of those professional skills like teamwork and leadership. We do things, something's called Lego submarines, where they have to build a Lego submarine, and we hide some of the pieces. That's the secret between you and I. But it's about building some of those skills, and then actually at the end we're talking about, well, you've had fun there, but where does this relate to what actually you're going to be getting into? So it's all about that kind of introduce, inspire, navigating, exploring the industry, because what I want them to have at the end of that session that week is a real understanding of, yes, I want to go and do something in this industry or business, or no, I'd absolutely hate to be doing something in this business or industry. And that's a successful work experience either way. The spotlight is where we navigate into, or we go, sorry, into more of the apply and demonstrate. This is for our year 12 and 13s. And what we're expecting in this work experience is we do 2 kind of different work experiences. We have the business side and the engineering side. So at the years 10 and 12, they all come in for a mix to learn about everything. We often find they want to all be engineers, but actually we talk to them about project management and data analysis, and they go, oh, I've never heard of that before. That sounds interesting. But now at this point in years 12 and 13, we say, right, okay, now your colours to the mast. Which one do you want to go and learn a bit more about and really have an in-depth, deep dive into that part of the business? And it's down south, we do it over 3 days, a bit of a shorter session. Another 16 students actually is happening next week. And we give them a real good look into the business. And we get some submariners, some real senior members of the business to talk about their journeys, as well as apprentices and graduates, which is the best part. We have a few different other areas of our work experience as well. So we do something called Women in Engineering, which is done in lots of businesses around the country now, quite simply to address the gender disparity in engineering. And the idea is they come out of that with an apprenticeship, all being well with an interview. So that's a fantastic initiative. We do World of Work too, which is essentially like bring your relative to work day, as long as they're of secondary school age, just to help with our, as a kind of a bit of a workplace benefit. I know, for example, in Barrow, we do something called, we do Ascend specific work experience, where we invite those with special educational needs into our workplace. And on top of all of that, we do a kind of virtual work experience as well. Whilst it's not something I certainly consider as the be all and end all work experience, I think it does offer a really good alternative for those that cannot make it to your offices for whatever reason. So it's a good kind of catch-all for the rest that cannot make it. And listening to some of your slides there, Lian, I was really inspired by your James, that kind of came onto your work experience. We also had our first fully visually impaired student on our work experience this year, which was really inspirational to have. It was a lot of work, purely because we had never considered it, and I think I was ashamed of myself for never considering it beforehand. But now we've had that experience, I'm keen to have those conversations with other businesses about how we can get more people with disabilities into work experience. Just looking at kind of one of the other things that we've done to be a bit more innovative is something that we've called mini projects. So I've talked a lot about years 10, 11, 12 and 13, and I'm sure Erica and the rest of the Careers in Enterprise company are saying, what about years 7, 8s and 9s? Where are they in your workings out? Well, absolutely, we have to consider those as well. And we recognise kind of some of the capacity issues that we have at BAE Systems, including security. It's quite difficult to get lots of people on site with us. And we have to kind of set our limits somewhere. And that's where we set at years 10 upwards. However, that doesn't mean we can't look at the new statutory guidance and try to be really innovative of how we work to still deliver to schools, support schools, and deliver that meaningful work experience. So we created something called mini projects, which is essentially something that I'm offering to any business, anyone that's on this call listening. I'm sure I can work out a mini project for you to deliver into schools. And that is a type of work experience where you think of what your business product is. And for us, it's submarines. And you say to your school students, I want you to design the next or the future of submarines. And and we've done this over 2 hours, but we've also done it over 3 days. We task them to go away and do some independent study in teams, set themselves into responsibilities and roles such as project manager and engineer. And we intertwine things like presentation skills, activities, official customer meetings, and all these kinds of fun parts of the project to really kind of embellish and make this a little bit of a bigger project. And at the end, I've never seen such fantastic and well done projects that they presented back to me with such little resource invested from my point of view. And I think that's a really important thing to stress when we are as employers sometimes overwhelmed with what we've got to do and support in schools. Mini project is very low resource, and it's something that you can just give to them. And some people, employers wise, will go into the school at the start of the day or start of the week, disappear for the whole week, and come back at the end and come back and present back and give some feedback. So there are lots of ways that you can work with your careers hub to establish how this can be meaningful, how this can affect Gatsby Benchmark 6, and how you can support your local schools with work experience.
Thanks, Tom. So much rich information there about the many ways that you've built your program, and I'm sure people are kind of considering how that applies to them. And I think some of the points that you were making were really interesting around, we are asking people to start early, and we think it's really important, kind of as you say, as you get onto those kind of year 10, 11, 12, 13, and actually you want young people to have started to build some of those skills that you were mentioning, like teamwork and leadership, and to have an understanding of what inspires them and kind of where they might fit, have visited different workplaces, and so that by the time they have maybe a bit of a longer placement, whether it's 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, that they really are feeling more secure in kind of those pathways they want to explore and investigate. So I think it's really interesting to hear some of the ways that you've tackled that with some of those mini projects that kind of suit your workplace. And I think that's what we're really keen to do, is kind of share some of that best practice, some of those innovative ideas that can really help other employers to engage in this. So we're going to come to Q&A so that we've got, because I can see they're starting to come in soon, so we're going to ask some questions to our panel, and I can also support with some of those. But I just wanted to ask you both before we go on to that. So I'll start with you, Lian. What helped you when you were getting started? What's kind of been the biggest support? And I guess, have you got any lessons learned or top tips you'd have from your perspective as you sort of developed that program that you outlined?
Yeah, I think one of the main factors for us was not to have a clear set vision in mind of what we thought this would look like, and actually every step of the way being really, really open and taking on board and ingesting feedback from all different areas. I think earwigging into the Careers Hub meetings and calls was wonderful, seeing what other people were seeing as challenges, getting ideas from all walks of life and industries, and just being like a sponge for the first few weeks was absolutely essential. Whereas in our industry, it's the opposite. You kind of have to have the opposite skills of being regimented, repeating the same thing over and over again, watching the budgets, having that balancing act, and really being ahead of the game. And this was none of that. It was really kind of really slowing it down and taking it into manageable chunks. And by doing so, actually, the team became more on board more organically and came up with their own ideas. We'd swept them into the workbook, or we swept them into James's journey. So everybody really felt like this was a project that they were invested in and they had brought to life themselves, which is an absolute dream when you have such a creative team from all different kinds of backgrounds and roles. So everybody's day to day was different, and hopefully James really benefited from that approach.
Can I just add in as well, Erica?
Yeah,
That
definitely.
I mean, going on about the careers hubs and what you're saying, Lian, is that mini projects wasn't my idea originally. It came out of the Wiltshire Careers Hub. I tried to go to as many of them across the south as possible, and we had a chat, and it was Lawn Manor Academy, to name drop if anyone knows the school, and that's where the spark of the idea came from, and here we are kind of delivering it across schools now. So you will go to these meetings and come out with 100 different ideas, which is what's fantastic about them.
I think, and we'll only encourage that at Careers and Enterprise Company. You know, we will continue to take these ideas nationally, and I think that's also where the employer standards was born. In that we wanted to make sure that all of these great things, because we hear it all over the country, and we want to really raise the profile of the excellent practice that's happening and support more employers to be able to engage. And particularly for those on the call, when you're thinking about your social value commitments, you know, if you're making those commitments, how do we make sure they really have the most impact for young people, and how do you get to benefit from other people's years of experience? And I think I was on an employer call yesterday, and with a large employer that has been delivering work experience at scale for over 10 years. And you find that people are still learning and adapting, Lian, to your point, over those years. And I think, you know, it tends to build and expand, and you start with one thing and then it builds. And I suppose that's a really good approach for anyone who's actually at the beginning of this process, or who needs to get people on board, is sort of starting small. Testing and building is often a really helpful way to approach it. Tom, I wanted to come to you and just say, in terms of kind of any barriers that you've faced or any lessons learned as you've developed this over time, are there any that you think would be particularly helpful for people on the call to learn from?
Yeah, and I think there kind of was a question which I haven't seen. It's about balancing students' aspirations for their work experience. That's one of my main kind of problems I've always faced, is having security constraints that we have as a business. Is that we're a systems engineering company down south. We do all of the systems behind the software of a nuclear submarine. So you can imagine that's lots of computers and lots of tip tapping away and all that kind of stuff. So we can't get these groups of 16 to 17-year-olds onto our systems. So a lot of it has to be delivered either in the form of talks or activities. So we often get lots of students come in with the aspirations to come and build a submarine right in our office, and sadly that's not what we're doing. We're not doing mechanical engineering, and I'm sure there are lots of engineering, particularly in construction companies on here, that have to really set those expectations at the very first point of the work experience, to say, actually, you know, it's slightly less interesting than that. But sadly, that the world of work is slightly less interesting than the way that we have it built up in our minds when we were at school. So I think the biggest learning curve for me was managing those expectations, and just making sure that when they're starting, we're understanding that they're here for a week of their own time. We need to make it impactful. Interesting is really important, and that's probably one of the hardest bits. But we also need to set those expectations early, because in some of the first work experiences, it wasn't something that I did, and we fell foul of it. And kind of some of the things that I've changed as an employer doing work experiences. When I started it, I inherited a scheme which we were partnered up with local schools, and we would go to X school, I won't name them, and say, look, send us your 16 of your students, let's do work experience on this date. And they would be a very dry, quite bored session where they wouldn't get much out of it. And I couldn't understand why we were doing this. So we've changed it to a completely blind screened application for work experience. And now we get students from as far as Manchester and Kent who are travelling for 2 hours in a taxi every day. It's quite extraordinary, but they're all incredibly interested and keen to be there, as opposed to their school careers leader insisting that that's where they're going for a week. So those two things, I think, are my biggest learning curve moments, and making sure we get an impactful work experience environment.
Thanks, Tom. And I think probably one of the things that, you know, we're looking at with that, our EqualX learning outcomes and framework, is that you will really know where a learner is. And to your point, Lian, about that kind of individual learner outcomes, you'll understand which phase they're in, what they need to experience next to really benefit from that opportunity. And to your point, Tom, if you started at year 7, and actually I've seen some comments in the chat as well, and we're going to come to our questions now about how early do we start, and absolutely at the Careers and Enterprise Company we back starting as early as possible, and that is in primary school where a lot of these concepts are formed. And yes, we're not talking about careers at this stage, but we're absolutely talking about not closing doors, understanding stereotypes, understanding that you can go into different sectors and what they are. And so I think it's kind of really important that we are getting to young people early, so that they still have their minds open to some of those industries and have those considerations. So I think that's really important, and will mean you have those more interested students coming through that you know, that at least know why they're there, and that they could benefit from some of the skills that they're learning, even if they don't want to go and work in your particular occupations that you have, but might want to work within the wider sector. So we're going to come to some Q&A now, so that we can make sure that we get through some of the questions that are coming up. And I think there's a question that's come up first, which is around virtual work experience. And Tom, you mentioned that you have that you have looked at this before. So I'm interested to know if virtual work experience fits into the idea of meaningful work experience, and whether others see value in offering virtual opportunities. So I'm going to take the first part of the question, and then I'll ask Tom and Lian if you see the value for yourself as employers in offering something that is virtual. So in terms of, does it fit with the meaningful definition? The meaningful definition that you saw me outline from Gatsby is the meaningful definition. So if you were delivering a work experience and it had two-way interaction, and you were on a screen like this and you had two-way interaction with a group or individual students, if they were doing a real piece of work, or a piece of work based on something real, much like Tom was describing a project, and they had feedback on their work, and they got a chance to reflect, and it met all of those different elements, then it would fit that meaningful guidance. And I think that the real key here is that you want to have young people over that period of time. They need to have had some in-person experiences over that period of time, so they understand different workplaces. So I think it is really about meeting that meaningful guidance rather than how it is delivered. And you can do that. You could do that virtually or in person. Some virtual experiences may be more pre-records and pre-recorded videos and going through a course. So that wouldn't necessarily meet that guidance, because there wouldn't be that two-way interaction in some of those projects and that feedback. So again, I guess it's sort of making sure that it fits. But even then, that could have a real place in a progressive program. So it might be that students have that, and that might be more of their kind of understanding the industry and part in a progressive program before they then went on to an in-person experience. So I think there's many ways that might fit within a wider and broader careers program for those young people. So if I go to Tom first, you mentioned virtual work experience. What, you know, do you see this having a place in your program?
Yes, said we offer it already. I think I used to have much stronger opinions on it being, and they were negative, to be transparent. I thought it's not something you can build a really meaningful work experience around. But having kind of done it for some time, and seeing the virtual work experience that's on offer, I've kind of come to a really good middle ground, because it is good. And there are businesses out there that cannot do in person for one reason or another. They may have no staff at an office, so there isn't an office because of the way that we work virtually. So I understand that for some people, it's the only way they can do it. And I would always say, for any business, anything that you do in terms of careers guidance, something's better than nothing. So if you can offer a virtual work experience, then great. But if you can offer in person, then even better. Where I think actually it comes into a real positive of virtual work experience is the fact that you're able to reach those that are social and economically disadvantaged. So we have areas of really high deprivation in my kind of geography that I look after, certain parts of Dorset and kind of South Hampshire, where we could really benefit of ensuring that those are getting those same opportunities at work experience. I mentioned earlier that we had two young girls that travelled from Kent to Surrey for morning and afternoon for a whole 5 days, costing £650 in taxi fees, which sounds great, and we're really proud that they did that and they were really engaged. But there are people in kind of the Weymouth area that could never do that. So a virtual work experience really helps those high areas of deprivation and for those students that haven't got access to opportunity.
And Lian, I don't know if you've looked at virtual at all, if it'd be right for your setting.
We haven't actually, mainly because what we're focusing on at the moment is that immersive experience in the guest journey, the holiday park journey. However, as Tom was talking there, I was thinking of a few opportunities and fields within our industry, within LOVAT Parks, that actually it may suit, even blending it with an in-person as well as an online kind of one-to-one, or sharing, how our computer-based work side of things work, such as the marketing, the social aspect, the tracking, the guest journey electronically. We could probably integrate it and ingest it, but we definitely couldn't, I don't think, focus our entire experience of work online.
And I think what we're seeing here with everything is that variety. And from our point of view, I think the real important thing here is that quality of impact and those outcomes for those young people, and making sure that it's purposeful and meeting that Gatsby benchmark guidance on making it meaningful. And I think if it meets that, then whether it's virtual or in person, often, to your point, Tom, it might be that some organisations, it's the only way they can reach certain parts of the country. It might be that actually it's the way that they work, and often in digital industries they're working in a hybrid way and it's realistic. But like you said, they might, you might have the opportunity to set a project online and have some interaction, and then have the students come into your office as well. So I think the main thing here is that it really meets that meaningful guidance, and then you can deliver in a way that suits your business. So I think we've got another question here. The next question from Laura Giddings, so around SMEs and entrepreneurs. SMEs and entrepreneurs often want to offer work experience, but they can't host students. So we can see how the Equalex builds experiences progressively over time, but what practical steps can be taken to make smaller, impactful engagement opportunities? So I think, Tom, you touched on some of the points here, which is in years 7 to 9, where we're trying to sort of truly introduce and inspire and start to think about how young people can investigate and explore some of the skills that they might need. There's some real opportunities there to have smaller experiences, bite-sized chunks, that might really give an opportunity for smaller businesses, or indeed larger businesses, to engage. And I think what we're looking at here with this model really is around the flexibility. So we are looking at how we can engage a lot of SMEs, and there may be some, much like you, Tom, that like you say, don't have access to a workplace where they can host lots of students. And I think if you don't have access to a workplace, we are seeing lots of models coming up across the system where perhaps you can take students to experience what it's like in your sector or your industry, but without them having to be in your workplace. So I know an example that we've been working on with Liverpool City Region, where they've had a sector focus, where they've worked with the gaming industry, and they've hosted sessions for a day at a university, but taking all of the different gaming industries and doing those 2-hour sessions where young people can come in and have an experience of the type of project work that they would have, build their skills, and that's over a day. And it means they don't have to come into a setting where they'd need an NDA to access those sites and wouldn't actually be allowed to go into those gaming sites. So there's lots of different models there. So I don't know, I'll come to you, Tom. I know you work with a big supply chain and you've overcome some of this even as a very large employer nationally. But I don't know if you'd have anything to add.
No, I do have a couple of points, because I was at a local careers hub meeting recently, and there was an entrepreneur. He was recently started his own recruitment business, and I think if you look at young people now, a vast majority want to be their own business owner, and they want to run their own business, be it on the internet or kind of in whichever way they choose. So I think it'd be incredibly impactful, and not to harp on about the mini projects, but that's a fantastic opportunity for a mini project. Could you imagine, I guess, a local kind of sole trader entrepreneur asking one of or a set of students to play out his week, so to speak? So making sure you've done your tax return, dealing with issues around your website. Why is that broken down? Or setting up a new website for your new business, responding to social media inquiries. And that would give these young people a real experience of what it's like to be a business owner. Because for any of those that are on the call today that have done or ventured into a side business or their own kind of self-employment, it's very, very kind of isolating and quite difficult. So that experience would be really impactful and meaningful as a work experience for young people to experience what it's like to be a small business or an entrepreneur.
And Lian, have you got anything you'd like to add on that question?
I completely agree with everything Thomas said. I think us as a business can offer a lot to young learners, like Tom says, people starting their own business, etc. There's this huge skill set needed, and I think that's often underestimated. And I think definitely that smaller businesses can offer so much.
I think, and I think the point we're making here is that this is absolutely part of it. And if we want to get to the scale that we need, and also 99% of businesses out there are SMEs. And so we need young people to know that they exist. They need to know what kind of skills they'll need to enter the business. And so I think it's about us really being able to support the system, whether that's through providers of work experience, whether that's through careers hubs, whether that's through those connections, to really make sure that our SMEs and entrepreneurs know how they can be part of this. And I think this flexible model really supports them to be able to engage in a way they have capacity, and also with their businesses if they don't have premises. So I think that there's lots of ways that they can get involved, and it's really important that we do. I think we've got time for one more question before we go. So I just want to look and see if we have got another question here that we haven't answered. That I think there's one here. I don't know if we touched, I think you've touched on the one about balancing students' aspirations, Tom, already. So let's see if there's another one here. Yeah, so we've got here one from Joe. Teachers have extensive training, EHCPs and SENCOs, etc., to help them understand specific needs for SEND placements. What is the best way to help the team understand how they best and can support the young person joining them? Lian, can I come over to you, because you've obviously specifically mentioned that on yours, and it'd be just great to hear your experience of planning for this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it helped that I used to be the general manager of the Cornish Park, so I kind of understood what the team needed from me when I was introducing this, and very much getting them on board with the planning of it. But I found an article that really spoke to me about when a young learner comes into a work environment, absolutely everything with that environment they have never experienced before, so they can't keep themselves safe. So I went in at the angle of, we have to start from ground zero. They have to, be coached through every single step, and they don't realize the importance of perhaps what we're showing them as part of the induction. So I gave each of the team something to work towards with James, whether that be from a safety aspect, whether that be from the guest journey and the opportunity to create almost a concierge guest experience, having those little nuggets of going above and beyond, and the quick wins that the team do. Each member of the team within, it was Padstow Holiday Village that we actually welcomed James to, have their own area of speciality that they're really, really passionate about and really, really good at. So we just kind of lit that with each of them, and allowed them to plan what James's time was going to look like with them, to really showcase what they do very, very well. And I was there as the consistent face for James that would always be there at every single time that he came to the 1 day a week sessions, the 1 day a week work experience. And we just tried to keep consistency within the team, in knowing that we were there for James, but also what he was telling us every single time that he was with us was also really important to have that two-way conversation with him, rather than us coming in as the teachers. We were more so guided by him, but also incredibly responsible for him as well.
Thanks, Lian. And Tom, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that from your experience recently.
Yeah, I
About
think
1 minute, I think, before we wrap up.
with time running out, I will say yes. I think for us, when we register that there's a send need for one of our work experience programs, reaching out to the teachers and parents just to fully understand it and clear up any unanswered questions that you have, and making sure that's at the top of everyone's mind that's delivering into programs, and kind of having I guess slightly different, but the visually impaired student on with our program, we had many sessions beforehand, and actually I asked the Dorset Council, who were the teachers of this young person, to come and give us a lesson on evacuating that person just in case we needed to, and how to really well get her around the program. So yeah, use all the support mechanisms you can, and just ask questions, I think, is the best thing to do.
Well, I think that's a great way to end this session, which is use all the support mechanisms you can. I hope today we've given you some really some context, some key points from a couple of employers who've been giving this a go, who've learned as they've gone, who've started small, who've added to it, who've really sort of used all those support mechanisms. Use us as the national body and look at us as we update guidance around this for employers. Use your local careers hub. Use local providers if you want to work with a charity or a provider of work experience. Connect into those local economic partners, because together we really want to make this transformation for young people, because that's what this is really about, is making sure that they can build the skills that we need in business, and that we can really transform those experiences so that when they are going through that transition into work, they stay within the system, and we can all get what we want for our local communities. So thank you to Tom, thank you to Lian, thank you for everyone who's joined the session, and we'll bring it to a close there.
Thank you, everyone.